My organization has the name Stichting Examination Chamber and is an organization involved in supervising and quality assurance on non-formal qualifications. And from the period of 2007 on, we were also involved in quality assurance on behalf of VPL procedures. Recently, in 2018, the government asked us also to take responsibility for the quality of exams in the formal VET sector, so in the vocational training. My organization started in 1996 and is more than 25 years working in the field. So I will share now the information about what we see in, let me see the next one, yeah. What kind of developments we see here in the Netherlands, and it might be a little bit different from what you experience in your country, but we can share that. What we see is that lifelong learning is a hot topic, but in the Netherlands, mainly based on what happens from the viewpoint of the educational standards, so the formal school diplomas. And what we see in practice is that the school diplomas prepare young people as a starting professional. And in the adults on the labor market, we see that the question is for skilled professionals. So there is a gap between the starting professionals and the skilled professionals, and eventually even the professionally mature professionals. They need a different way of testing. That's one of the developments we see here in the Netherlands, and we take care of that from our point of view. The second development we see is the implementation of the EQF, but in the national context, the National Qualification Framework. And what we find so difficult about it is that the mapping of qualifications is done on behalf of qualifications, but actually the qualification is not applying for a job. That's the person behind it. And what we always need to take in mind is what is the employability of the personnel, of the people behind it. And is somebody with a diploma capable of doing the job if the job is on a different level as the starting level? What have people learned in the informal way of working on the job, etc.? So that's where VPL procedures come in, of course, we know that all, but that's not everywhere on the labor market known as such. We have to work on that. And the third development we see nowadays is that we, and that's where we have the whole project internationally, of course, of the cross-professional skills and the transversal skills. What have you learned in one job or one sector, and can you use in a different sector? We are working with that already for several years, from 2017 on. So I will take you with me through that process. What we have seen in starting professionals and getting the experts, we based our system on the solo taxonomy, which you most likely know all, because that's already a taxonomy from the 1980s. Okay. So this is what we simplified it, and which is also quite similar to what we see in the international projects, that you have starting professionals, skilled professionals, and the mature professionals who are capable of taking the starting professional in guiding during their work. Yeah, and I will continue because this is not so new, but in practice, we have quite a lot of discussion with the Ministry of Education, who thinks that the educational standard and measuring the starting professional is the highest you can get to. So the diploma of the formal education system is seen by the Ministry of Education as the highest level you can reach on. And we disagree on that, but we will show you that. This is what we use in the international projects: starting level, basic level, sufficient level, advanced level, and the expert level. And we reduced that to 3 levels. So the starting level, let me show, the starting level, the sufficient level, and the expert level, because the levels in between are hard, are very hard to differentiate in, is our experience here. So we reduced it to 3 levels. And what we see also in practice is that, for instance, if I take you with an employee working in, for instance, the graphic industry, he starts at the age of 22, having a diploma at a level 2, and moving during his career to at the age of, let's say, 40, being a manager of a production department, having approximately 10 people at level 2 working with. So he grows in taking courses, informal learning, in the situation, etc. But the problem he faces is that he has no proven diploma that he is a manager at a production department. And what happens if people, if the labor market is changing and the graphic industry has no work anymore? So you see a disconnection of what's happening in the life of somebody at the age of 40 and needs to move to a different sector. We see that in all kinds of industries, also in the medical sector, etc., where we have either we have too many people or we have too few people. So how can we make it visible that somebody who learned quite a lot is not only by taking the VPL procedure in making a photo of what he has done in the graphical industry, but also what he can do where he is capable of the transfer skills he can take to a different sector. So for instance, in logistics, etc. And that forms the base, the start of developing the cross-professional framework we have defined for the Netherlands, and which is mainly based on the transversal skills and all kind of things you need to take. The program, sorry for that it changes so much, but the program without touching it changes the screens every time. Let's go forward, come on. So what we have done is that you have the EQF system, all known by you, of course, with 8 levels. And we have in the Netherlands prepared the Dutch qualification framework, which is like EQF based on qualifications. And what we have said is that we need not a framework of, no, come on, a qualification based on not a framework based on qualifications, but on the competences of people. And we developed also at a comparable level of what EQF has defined. So the BOC, we call it in the Netherlands, which is the cross-professional framework. And what you can see is that we have an equivalence with EQF, which, and this one is how the Dutch system, formal education system, is linked to EQF. And what we now have linked also to EQF, but made, of course, a difference because we we look from the framework of the labor market, from the view of the labor market, of what people need to move from one sector to another or from one job to another. So that's what we started with. And here I described how it is comparable to each other. EQF, the European Qualification Framework, is based on knowledge and competences and skills, also responsibility and the level of independency. You see that also for the Dutch Qualification Framework, and what we added to it in our cross-professional framework is that we added commercial and financial skills, the management skills and leadership, and the transversal, and there's a typo, transversal skills. And what we also did is that we not stayed with the 8 levels which have been decided, have been described by EQF, but added a 9th level, because the people at level 8, which is the PhD, also need to be judged. And there is something in the labor market above level 8. That's what we discovered anyhow. And with the labor people in the labor market, we discussed all the descriptors which we have worked on. And Pauline asked me, can you provide us with more content in that sense? So I worked on that. But first of all, I want to show you how many VPL procedures we already have done with this cross-professional competence framework, working from 2016 on. Let me show you. So you see that the number of VPL procedures on this structure increase, and we are now starting in implementing it full in the whole labor market in the Netherlands. I'm sorry. It's so touchy, you know. Throughout the years, we have a number of VPL procedures increasing, but I also provide you with the different levels we have measured over the years. And there is a slight difference between the left number 482 and the total in the right table, because there's already added the procedures we have done in the previous month of 2022. What you see is that the main interest is on level 6, the bachelor level. The bachelor level is the level people, the adults working in on the labor market, who need to provide that they, their employer, that they, or the government, that they really work at level 6. Although they don't have a diploma of level 6 of a bachelor, you know, so they increased their level of thinking, of working, and their experience, and that added value on the person can be shown by this procedure, and therefore you see that the most VPL procedures are done on level 6, although we see now more and more interest on the lower levels. But in the Netherlands, it's mainly done for level 6, up so far. Oh, let me see this one. What I first want to show you is that what we try to do is in the VPL procedure, where we use the instruments of e-portfolio, of assessments, of testing, etc., is that we make use of the best fit method. And the best fit method means that you look at the 3 levels, level 3, 4, and 5, for instance, to see what's the level for the candidate. Yeah, by always comparing, then you come to what is the level on behalf, for instance, of communication skills. So that's the way we try to do it. And then I take you with me, for instance, for level 4, how we, the managing level, how we make use of that, how we described all the indicators for the different skills that are part of the measurement. We make use of e-portfolio assessments, aptitude tests, reference checks, etc. At every level, we have the context defined, and then we try to see of all the skills necessary, besides the knowledge, of course, at every level. What is the skills used relevant for that level? The communication skills, the information skills, problem solving skills, learning and development skills. I just go through it, and if you have questions later on, we just pick the relevant slide, of course. The commercial and financial skills, that's one of the skills we added to the EQF skills, you can say. Management skills and leadership. And then you have the responsibility and level of independency. And of course, the transversal skills. Are you capable of applying the knowledge and the skills learned or used in one sector in also another sectors or in a different job, etc. So, and there, what we do in the Netherlands is that my company is the owner of this framework, and we provide all the VPL institutes to make use of that, and they have their instruments to measure the people's skills at the different levels. So actually, we don't measure the people ourselves. The VPL institutes do that on behalf of us. That's what we try to. We look, of course, of the quality assurance that everything is done in the way which is comparable to each other. Then I take you to the last slide of my presentation. What we see is, as an example in the Netherlands, that we used it for, on behalf of the project for counselors, Alderman. That's a profession, you know, in practice. That's not something you can learn at school. That's something done during your life career. And one of the examples we had, it was a candidate with a diploma as a carpenter or locksmith. He became, first of all, a counselor in a village. Later on, he moved to a large city where he became, was appointed in the function as an alderman for 12 years. And he wanted to get a job on the labor market again, but he had to prove his level of working and thinking. And therefore, we measured, one of the institutes measured all his skills, and it was proven that he was capable of working at level 6. And therefore, he got a certificate of competence in that sense. Furthermore, we make use of this framework for the occupational therapists, also for the organizational advisors. And what we see more and more is that if people want to move on the labor market to a different sector or a different job, they come to us and ask, can we define the skills, the level of skills I'm working with, so that I can prove that in my job career. And that's what we do right now with the project of transversal skills here in the Netherlands. And we have more than 400, nearly 500 procedures done with this framework and the instrument. Are there any questions about that? So we have translated already all the 9 levels and the indicators for that. So, and I will provide you with my presentation later on. Okay? Are there questions?
Thank you very much. And before we ask a question, maybe you can stop sharing your screen so we can see everyone. And I will also monitor if there's hands that are raised in the chat.
So I end this sharing, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if we need to go back to the slide, we can open it again. I can do it.
Stop sharing. Okay.
Here.
Yeah, there we are.
Okay. So who wants, Julia? You have the floor for the first question.
Thank you, Annie, for your presentation. It was very interesting. I would have a question regarding the descriptors for the competencies, because in the work of our competence framework, we actually came across quite some difficulties to find or to differentiate the proficiency levels on, for example, conflict solution. So I would like to know if you could share with us how your experience was regarding that and what your insights are.
Yeah, thank you for your question. That was indeed quite a lot of work in defining the things, because you need to define it for different levels, and it needs to get on top every time of it, you know, making use of the best fit method. But the most difficult thing was, well, we had, of course, some help with it, because the national qualification framework already had a big research on how to define the skills and for the different levels, and especially the indicators. But the main difference is by viewing it from the labor market viewpoint, and not by looking from a qualification standpoint. But yeah, that was the main thing, I think, in seeing how you can make the implementation for those working on the labor market. And by having all the complete framework, you can't do it for one level, you know, you need to do it for all of them, and to make it a coherent model. Is that an answer to your question? Yeah,
yes, thank you.
Okay.
I actually have a similar question, because you mentioned that you reduced it to 3 levels. For simplification, but when you show in one slide that you added a 9th levels based on EQF, so, and then on another slide you selected 3 levels out of this all EQF levels. So I was thinking, perhaps are you focusing on a specific range of levels?
Yeah. What we do actually is there are different things we are talking about. You have the framework, which makes it from the basic level to the top level, and what you see in EQF, and that's mainly also for the qualifications, that you have the occupational levels, you know, and getting upward. And what we noticed is that on the labor market, you miss the 9th level. You know, so therefore we added that, realizing that there is most likely nobody to judge that 9th level, but you can't ignore it. Therefore we added that level. And we have to realize that quite a lot of people are working on a certain level without having a diploma a qualification for that level. I don't know how it is in your country, but I took a study for social geography, and I did my PhD on that, but I'm not working in social geography. And working on examination and judging people, etc., takes different techniques, all kind of things, but I don't have a diploma for that. So there is a difference in having a diploma on one side, and for some jobs you need a certain diploma to be capable of working in that job. Think, for instance, in medicines, but there are quite a lot of jobs where you can have a quite different learning trajectory and working in a different sense, in a different sector, etc. And therefore, that is what we see as the levels 1 to 9. What I did with the 3 levels on one of the first slides is that there is a growing path, everybody becoming, you know, you start as in the beginning as a starting professional, and you need guidance in getting around in the field. And at a certain level, you can do that job properly, independently. And that's a different way that is not classified by the structure of EQF, basically for qualifications. It can be, but it is not necessarily. So you get, for instance, a diploma for managing logistics, yeah, a level 4. But if you search in the job descriptions, yeah, the employer asks a manager logistics with experience of 3 to 5 years because he needs someone who is capable of doing the job independently. And although you have the diploma of managing logistics, you are not invited for that job. And that's the difference, you know. So there is, on the labor market, there is a different reality, which is not reflected in the diploma structure in that sense. Therefore, that was what I said is adding from starting professional to working professional, working independently, and becoming a mature professional expert, etc. And there I simplified it to 3 levels. But that is not comparable with the levels of EQF or BUC or whatsoever, you know. Yeah. And what I did with further on in my presentation, the best fit method is always to look where somebody fits with the skills. Is it level 3, 4, or 5? And then you can compare things if the indicators are working good enough. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I think this this difference that you make between the qualification and what is defined in the diploma and what is actually asked by the employers is very interesting, and that's a very interesting dimension. And also this, how would I say that there are 2 directions that are possible for building competence referential. One is built on the EQF level, which is also to a certain extent a proficiency level. And another one is more perhaps simplified and goes from level 1 to 5 or level 1 to 3 in your case, and is also proficiency level. So how to articulate this kind of different direction that we can take in building a referential is very interesting, and something I think that we are reflecting on in the project, and that we will discuss in the European training, I think, with the practitioners on the field. Well, thank you for the clarification on this. I see now that Karine has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. And Alice, many thanks for this information you gave us. One question arises now for me concerning the last point which you said. So is there maybe then some kind of, let's say, parallel certification system growing? So one for the labor market and for one in the educational system? And
Yeah,
what's the consequences of that? So maybe this goes in the direction of Judith's question in the chat. Yeah, how does the labor market appreciate it?
Yeah, in the ideal situation, it should be one, but that's not working that way. So we get indeed a parallel structure in that sense. Yeah. Yeah.
If it's so ideal, I don't know. So this is would be an interesting discussion, maybe. But the second question I had, maybe I did not understand it. You showed us that you mentioned that you added some skills like commercial skills and so on, and then you have also added transversal skills or transfer skills, which was in your PowerPoint slide. And I asked myself, is this transfer skill an additional skill for being able to transfer or apply other skills in different domains? Or is it some kind of cross-sectional part or quality of these additional skills which you mentioned, commercial skills, financial skills, and so on? So the meaning of this transfer or the transversal skills is not clear to me up to now. Maybe you can explain.
I think I just put them underneath as a kind of conclusion. But you also can see to make the institutes realize that they are not only measuring the skills belonging to a profession, but if people need to, for what reason soever, need to move from one sector to another, or want to move from one sector to another, or to a different job, then we need to see, and that's up to the professionals to measure it, is somebody capable of what he learned in one profession or one sector, capable of taking with him and transferring it to using it in a different sector. And that's something we want to be explicitly mentioned in the report. So it can be a conclusion in the end.
So this is explicitly mentioned on this certificate of competence, which you
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but no matter which domains. So it's a general ability to transfer skills.
Is somebody capable of doing it in a different way or in a different sector, etc. Yeah, but of course, for some professions you need specific diplomas, and that is always the case. But for those jobs where not a specific diploma is applied or is necessary, you just can involve people who have a certain level of thinking and working, and they only have to add those diplomas or specific knowledge which is necessary for that job. So we can reduce what people need to learn additionally. They don't need to learn managing a group of people or whatsoever, but only the specific things necessary for being a logistic manager, you know? Not the managing part, but the technical things.
And the way this is assessed is that they have to give examples about applying it to different domains and showing that
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's a system of assessment which is applied. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sylvia?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Annie. We meet once again after
Yeah.
was December
Long time ago.
2019. Yeah. So in Vilnius was yes. This final part also was something that was very interesting to deepen more in relation with what you were saying, how to assess these transfer skills, because when I found it written, I was really curious about how to effectively assess the capacity for one person to apply in different contexts so that I think that the knowledge behind this capacity is to have a very in-depth knowledge about how the different sectors work. So it was something, I think it's very challenging, this part. And and in relation to this, I also put the question during the form through which I enrolled in. The course was about trustiness among the different key stakeholders involved in the process. Is something also related to the question on the chat. For instance, in Italy, it is really important, this trustiness among labor market, employers, labor market operators, specialists, and guidance experts, and the people themselves, the schools preparing youngsters in applying for guidance and so on. Because then I was thinking about how to effectively ensure this trustiness among the different actors, because for instance, in Italy, we are again asking a lot of, if possible, evidences, third-part evidences, second-part evidences, so to be sure that it's not only on the candidate capacity to
the capacity of the assessors, you mean, is very, very important. Who is capable of doing this? And it's not easy, but there is quite a difference between youngsters taking an assessment amongst youngsters and adults. And you need to realize that as well. So our framework is meant to be for measuring the capacity, the skills of adults who have some experience already on the labor market. And that's the difference, of course. Yeah. We have somebody else for a question?
Hugo, do you want to ask a question?
Hello, Annie and all. Thank you very much for your presentation and your precious information. I have 2 questions. I'm from Portugal. We have also a system, but it's a more governmental system about the recognizing of qualifications. And my doubt is, in your case, when someone don't have all the skills to recognize that or need some skills, what are your response? The do training or what? And the other question is not so related with the presentation, but is important for me, how you do to attract the adult people to this kind of process.
Excuse me, the last question is how
you attract the people to do this kind of or how you motivate the adult to go to this process.
Okay, yeah, Thank you so much for your questions. First of all, yeah, sure, people try to prove their skills at a certain level because the level is required, for instance. And that doesn't mean that people immediately have the level of skills, all the skills at the same level. So what we have done nowadays is that the certificate of competence makes a variation in it as well. So you can, for instance, have the skills for problem solving at level 6 and information skills on level 5 and etc. So we can identify the different levels for the different skills, and that needs to motivate people. And then I come to the second thing. Some things can be done by training, by taking courses, but quite a lot of things, for instance, information skills you can learn, you can get handouts, etc., etc. But certain skills like managing skills, etc., you need to experience, you need to get to learn on in a working environment, you know. So it motivates people to ask their supervisor to guide them in their working process for the coming 6 months, and then they can come back for taking the measurement on the level of skills for that topic again. So sometimes it can be done by training, but most of the things come forward from developing yourself in a working environment. And it is not something, because it's on an individual base, it's not connected to a training program, not to a cycle, you mean, so if you are ready for it, you can come to an institute to have the assessment done on a certain topic, and then we can provide them with a new certificate of competence. Okay, that's one thing. And how do we motivate people? Yeah, it depends on certain jobs where the branch tells you that they need a certain level. For instance, in youth care, they need to show that they are capable of working on level 6. So that's done by the government or by the branch organization. And what we see now is that in the Netherlands, they try to motivate people to stimulate them in lifelong learning by providing them with a voucher of 1,000 euros to take courses or to go for a VPL procedure. So that's the way it works.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
I would like to come back to the question of Sylvia about the trust of the among the stakeholders, because you mentioned in your presentation that you've been talking with the Ministry of Education, and they don't really understand the difference between what employers ask and the qualification. They think this is the highest level you can get. So perhaps you can tell us a bit about your experience talking with the Ministry of Education or any other stakeholders like employers. How do you build trust about this issue, which is kind of recent, you know?
Yeah. Well, actually, talking to the social partners is the most easiest one. And they appointed us as being the national VPL knowledge center. So that makes it easy. And they understand what we are talking about and what we are dealing with. For the ministries, you have the different ministry. We have the Ministry of Social Affairs and Economic Affairs. They understand what we are talking about. But the Ministry of Education is quite different. Ministry of Education thinks only of formal education. And thinking about lifelong learning is quite difficult for them. And they have a plan proposed for 2030 to be ready for that. And we have to be ready right now. So, you know, yeah, it's not easy having a chat with them. Like, for instance, talking about the system, if I am coming with a diploma telling my name, Annie Kempers, has showed all the everything learned at school at that level, they say it's the qualification that has the level. It's not the person having the level. And that's the different, yeah, the most difficult discussion we have got so far. And I always say it's not the diploma applying for a job, it's the person applying for the job. But I don't know how it is in your country, but here in the Netherlands, the Ministry of Education is the most difficult one to get onto this development.
Thank you. Julia.
Thank you very much. I would have another question regarding the levels you were sharing in your presentation, that especially level 6 is interesting on the labor market. So coming from the NQF point of view, working for the NCP in Austria, I would be interested whether the level 6 has also implementation or an impact regarding the salary, or if it's more about the recognition and the reputation of level 6.
Both. On one hand, it's required for certain jobs that they need to prove that they have level 6, although they don't have a diploma, because a diploma takes for quite a lot of people about 4 years to reach the end, and they are not capable of saying goodbye to their job and going back to university to study for 4 years. They need to keep on working, you know. So, and what they developed is through their job a growing in their level of thinking and working. So that's on one side. On one side, it's required by certain professions, and on the other side, people realize that they grow during their working life. And what we notice is that if, for instance, USO is taking a picture of the level of education of a nation, they always ask, what is the formal diploma, the highest formal diploma you've got? And they don't realize that people grow within their working career. And it would be good to make that visible as well, and to recognize that. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. And about the salary, is the National Qualification Framework with the levels attached to salaries, or is that?
It depends on the branch, and
okay.
It depends on what the social partners have dealt with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Before I give again the floor to Karin, I saw that there was a question as well in the chat, and I will come back to it. It's from Judith. And the question is, how does the labor market, so the companies and the employers, respond to the certificate that you issue? Are they helpful for the job applicants, and do the employers recognize the VPL as a useful procedure when they are recruiting?
On one hand, it's helping them. indeed, and the employers are recognizing it. On the other hand, it's difficult as the Ministry of Education tells us that we are not allowed to provide certain certificates, you know? So yeah, it's not always easy in that sense. Yeah. But yeah, we have to deal with that, and it takes a long time. Let me say you, that's our experience. If you are not an organization appointed by the government, it's always a difficult discussion you have got. But, and therefore it takes time that the labor market sees what's the value of it and how they can use it. Yeah.
Then what's the influence of the Ministry of Education that says, oh, it's not, you cannot recognize the certificate? How does it impact?
For quite a lot of branches, they say, leave them. We are going our own route, our own way. But for some branches, especially, for instance, for let me say, the medical sector, there it is difficult because the formal diplomas have a certain automatically right for people, you know, it provides them an entrance, or it's required that people need to have the formal diploma, and then it's not easy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But,
and maybe the last question for today, Karin.
Yes, I make it quick because time is running. Anja, I just wanted to ask you concerning these transfer skills, which we discussed before. Did you experience that so some differences for special groups? So is it maybe these transfer skills more higher leveled by people who have a higher formal qualification, or who are older, or so is there a difference in the persons concerning this transfer skill?
the transfer skill is easier for people at a higher age, you know, more adult, more experience. If you come at the age of 22, 23, you don't have so much experience already, you know, so that makes it more difficult. And besides that, the higher the level, the easier it is. Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we are coming to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank you again very much, Annie, for taking the time to present the context and the process in the Netherlands regarding transversal skills. I can say I'm still curious. I still have other questions, but time is running, and we have come to the end of this hour webinar. So I will meet some of you in the European training in Perugia for the TRANSVAL-EU project, and we will also be again gathered for another webinar on the 23rd of May, and it's about a validation tool used with migrants. I sent you an invitation by email. And yes, maybe Annie, if you have any final words for the participants, I can give you the floor.
Erik and I already prepared, we have published an article on this topic, which is not in English yet, but we will work on that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
If you have any other additional resources available in English and we can share, I can share it with the participants together with your presentation. So you can send it to me.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you very much also for the article. Erik, maybe you want to say a final word as well.
Yeah, Annie didn't notice, but the article was translated and it
Okay.
is shared during the meeting.
Okay, thank you so much, Eric.
But if you want, we can also publish it on TRANSVAL-EU website if that's
Yeah.
if you agree.
Yeah, we agree. It's published already, so it's okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar.
See you in
And
Perugia.
You in Perugia for some who are joining in the project, and the others also in the next validation task force meeting. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.